I got into a conversation recently with a friend of mine who has watched many of my videos, and he was, I think, very surprised to find out that I believe in deferring to authority on some matters, even if the authority disagrees with your own beliefs or what you would rather would be the case. So, to put it in more specific terms, my friend was asserting that one should always trust their own sense of logic, their own skills at deducing the truth and ethics, rather than listening to authorities like teachers, government, um, and particularly religion, where the leaders might just tell you, like, please believe this because I said so, or act this way because I said so. That's kind of the essence of what it means to be an authority figure. You might know someone, or you've read a particular author who you think is very smart and whose opinion you think very highly of, or whose advice you take very seriously. But if you are able to just ignore them when you disagree, or to just go against whatever rules they might set out, then they're not really an authority figure. That's just someone you respect. I think an authority figure has to have some kind of power over you, if not a sort of a legal power where they can literally make you do something. Then an authority figure can at least make you defer to their judgment over your own. And I think a lot of people, especially atheists and sort of secular-minded people, think that that sounds just a little bit stupid, like that doesn't sound very logical, it doesn't sound very rational. If you're a logical, rational person, then you should be able to make decisions for yourself. That is, to do research and to find out the truth of something for yourself by looking at sort of scientific studies or reading around a subject and forming your own opinion. And in terms of ethical problems, you think that you'd be able to come to your own conclusions about the difference between right and wrong in any particular situation. And that's what I used to think for a long time. Once I reached the age of about 13, 14, 15, I started to sort of become my own person intellectually. And I was able to form my own thoughts, my own ideas, my own opinions. And those thoughts, ideas, and opinions that I'd come to by myself felt so much stronger than anything that I could be told by an authority figure. I had such a high opinion of my own rationality that I would never want to follow along with an authority figure going like, this is right, this is wrong, or anything like that. I thought myself very much above any authority figure at that time. And I think arrogance, especially intellectual arrogance, is at the heart of this kind of belief system. I mean, there is also some very good examples, which my friend brought up during this discussion, of times when authority has been horribly misused to spread misinformation or to tell people to do very bad things. It's easy to point to certain religions that have told its followers, where the religious leaders have told the followers to do extremely evil things, extremely stupid things. Cult leaders especially abuse this power to make people reject their own family and their friends for not believing in what they believe to be the truth. And I'm absolutely not trying to deny any of those examples. They are clearly a misuse of authority in that situation, and those people who were trusting the authority figures were probably foolish to do so. But to take an extreme counterexample, I'd like to bring up not a true real example, but a film I watched that I thought was very interesting. It's called The Last Supper. It was made in 1995, and I had never heard of it up to the point of watching it. The film is about a group of grad students in America who are very liberal-minded, very left-wing, as college students usually are. Every week they invite someone to dinner whose political views they disagree with, and they murder them. They believe that the views of the people who they are inviting to dinner, mostly they're conservatives or they're sort of anti-environmentalists, or they are one of them is a pro-life activist. And what I think is an interesting part of the film is that we often hear the conversations between these students where they argue about the ethics of what they're doing. And yes, it's an extreme example, and yes, it's just a film. This never really actually happened. I think that this is an extreme version of what many atheists really believe. And I'm not saying that religious people are morally superior to atheists, because obviously there are some extremely unethical practices that are undertaken by many different kinds of religious people. But I think there is a sense in which atheists and secular thinkers, people who romanticize their own rationality, who come to their own moral conclusions and value that above any authority figure, authority, any rules, I believe they do think of morality as a lot more grey, as a lot more sort of liquid, movable. They believe that there are no set rules, but that they can manipulate, that they're smart enough to be kind of above the rules, and that they can set their own laws and ethics, and that in any situation they can probably justify certain behaviors, such as murder, lying, bullying, something we see a lot of these days. And I think this is especially prevalent among intelligent people. I think, I've thought about making a video about this specifically for a long time. Just the fact that I think being intelligent, being rational, being able to form these complex intellectual gymnastics, it allows you to justify anything, any behavior that you want to engage in, anything you want to believe because it's convenient for you. You can, someone who's intelligent can weave these narratives, can form these arguments, these mental gymnastics to justify it. The smarter you are, the easier you can do it, and the less noticeable it'll even be to yourself that you are doing it, because it's so easy. I talked about this when I first read The Righteous Mind, and I think it's so true. Since I read that book, I think about it all the time in this specific sense. Motivated reasoning is really powerful, and it's even more powerful the better you are at reasoning. So I've been thinking about this moral principle that I think most people believe, or they say they believe, that every human life is sacred, or that if they don't want to use political language, people say every life is valuable, every human life is equal, every life matters. Although I think I might get in trouble for saying the specific combination of words. People have a general agreement that human life is precious, and that doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you're born with a disability, or in a certain country, or if you speak a certain language, if you whatever. A human life is a human life, and there are a few edge cases where people might get into discussions, but the thing is that it always comes back to this moral principle that we all appear to agree on, that human life is worth protecting. It's valuable. And saying it's sacred is kind of, taking out of religious language, to say that it is valuable above anything else. There's no price that you can put on a life. And I think that whether you are religious or not, I think if you truly believe that, then it's probably because you were born and raised in a in a Christian country or a religious country, in a culture that taught you that so effectively. It was ingrained in you so well that you believe it to be a fundamental truth of life, and you don't even notice that it was because you were taught by an authority that was the case. I have reason to believe, or I've heard it said, that in the ancient world, before what we now recognize as sort of religion and ethics, that this belief was simply not very prevalent. The people were very much out for themselves. They were out for their families, and there was a lot more behavior that we would consider unethical in terms of how they treated other people. And this idea that another human is just as valuable as yourself and that you should treat them in a way that you would like them to treat you, it is simply not a natural law. It's not something that we're born knowing naturally. And it's also true. I mean, I read the Gulag Archipelago recently, and what Solzhenitsyn observed is that if you raise children in the environment of a gulag, there's a chapter where he just talks about children and youths who were raised in this environment. It's basically a lawless, godless environment, really the absolute worst conditions, where you need to be out for yourself in order to survive. The people who survived are the ones who took advantage of others, who took from others, who were just completely set on survival above any kind of ethics. And this was just the law. Might makes right. This is the law of nature. The idea that you should care about other people who are of no direct benefit to you that's taught to you. That's not a natural belief. That's what I think anyway. And it's so funny that people, it's been taught so effectively that we think that it's natural. That's what's so funny to me. So you talk to these atheists. I mean, I should mention I consider myself an atheist or a non-believer. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a practicing Christian. But I'm talking about this sort of what used to be called sort of atheism plus. There's another word for it, sort of modern atheism, new atheism. And this mindset that ethics doesn't have to come from authority, it can just come from you. And this is also a kind of Randian belief. Ayn Rand was an atheist, and she grew up in Soviet Russia, or was it a different Soviet country, but coming from that environment, she abhors authority. You can see that in her writing. She believes that man is strong enough intellectually and physically and spiritually to guide himself, and that there is no need to defer to authority, to the government, to God, that man is the ultimate being. And I'm sure there's going to be Randians who watch this video who say I'm wrong about that and I've misinterpreted her, but sorry, I'm trying my best. But I think that's simply not true. And that's a belief that I've only come to in the last few years as I've been interested in learning about Christianity. And I think this value of human life is the most obvious example of this. But it's also seen in you can see this like valuing honesty. Things like lying is bad and honesty is good. It's the same kind of idea. We think this. Atheists think that this is just self-evidently true, and that the people would know this if they weren't taught it by, if there was no religion in the culture to teach it. I had a friend. I'm sure they don't think this anymore. It's very much the arrogance of youth that I was discussing before. But I had a friend when I was younger, and he believed that murder should be legal if you had a good reason to do it. If someone had done something bad enough to justify the revenge, that should be permissible, and it was only senseless murder without a reason that should be illegal. And this wasn't just, big talk. He really believed this. And I am trying to remember who it was, but well, I won't discuss it now. But there was someone in his life who he really hated. He had kind of a troubled upbringing, and there was someone who he wanted to kill. And of course, he'd never get away with it, and he would never do it because it's illegal. But I think he, a lot of people think that way. I think that that if you could get away with murder, that there are people who you could probably do with, who probably deserve it, and that you'd be justified in killing, and not only justified, but that you'd be, what's the word? You'd be morally obligated to murder them in the way that these grad students in The Last Supper feel that they're doing they're doing an act of justice to kill their dinner guests, that they're preventing further misery, further death in the future by doing so. But I think I've rattled on for long enough, and I hope you've enjoyed this. As always, I'm interested to see what you have to say in the comments of this video. And until next time, I hope you're doing well, and I hope you continue to do well. Thank you very much for watching.